Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. Today is the 27th day of August 2022. We are on page 46, beginning with the sentence, "There are three outstanding features of this action of the higher when it works integrally on the lower nature."
Before we start reading the para that we have to read today, I will give you a summary of what he has said in the previous para so that we get the continuity. The integral yoga is almost entirely a psychological effort. Asanas and pranayama are not forbidden, nor are they recommended. Okay, so what then constitutes the psychological endeavor? It's a progressive surrender of the ego, a sense of separation from all else, and an ascent into the beyond ego, which is the self, we also call it the Brahman consciousness. The workings of the consciousness of the beyond ego are vast, incalculable, and inevitable. But the path is certainly not easy, nor are there any shortcuts. What are the qualities required for the ascent from the ignorance and ego to knowledge and God? They are colossal faith, absolute courage, unflinching patience. The integral yoga has three stages. The first is the individual effort to create a connection between the individual and the divine. The second is a very wide and laborious preparation, which is a period of purification and concentration. The last is the final and conclusive transformation. But often the divine works hidden in the wings and the sidelines without openly coming onto the stage and revealing himself. He supports, helps, prompts from the background. Faith in him makes the blind to see and the lame to stride over the hills. And the Sanskrit is there, which I can read out as well. Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum langhayati girim. The one who is mute, the one who is dumb, okay? He is not able to talk, he becomes over-talkative, okay? And the lame is enabled to stride over the hills if you have faith. Faith has that power. When the recognition of the divine comes, then the intellect perceives a law that encourages constantly and helps from within. The heart feels the presence of the divine master and friend. One may see the divine mother lifting us up from all that fails, all falls. One may see the divine mother lifting us up from all falls. And it is always present. And she is always present with love and encouragement. So, the integral yoga is a very difficult path. But when the results are experienced, then the difficulties of the path seem to be fully justified and the path seems to be easy after all. So this is what he has said. Compared to what is to be achieved, it is the easiest of all, he says, compared to what we have to achieve.
I have one question.
Yeah.
In the beginning you mentioned that these experiences come afterwards.
Yeah.
What about all of those who have an experience before of Sri Aurobindo or Mother?
So you have to go back to the past life. The preparation has taken place there. There are so many small children who have experiences. Okay, Raman Maharshi at the age of 16 he had an awakening. At the age of 16, Ramakrishna, when he was 6 or 7, when he saw white cranes flying against the black clouds of the monsoon, he fainted and he had an experience of the infinite. Then take even Carl Jung. Okay, when he was a baby of 3 in the pram, he had a spiritual experience. So that all refers back to the past life. Without preparation and purification, nothing is possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. There are 3 outstanding features of this action of the higher when it works integrally on the lower nature. In the first place, it does not act according to a fixed system and succession as in the specialized methods of yoga, but with a sort of free, scattered, and yet gradually intensive and purposeful working, determined by the temperament of the individual in whom it operates, the helpful materials which his nature offers, and the obstacles which it presents to purification and perfection. In a sense, therefore, each man in his path has his own method of yoga. Yet, there are certain broad lines of working common to all which enable us to construct not indeed a routine system, but yet some kind of shastra or scientific method of the synthetic yoga. So, I think it's very clear what he's saying, that in the other systems, there are fixed methods that you follow. The best example is the Raj Yoga, where you have 8 steps, okay? And you have to do each one, purify yourself, and they start from the lowest level of the body, and then they go slowly up until they come to the mind. And then in the mind also there are 3 stages. So 8 stages. That's a well-known method. I might as well mention them. Yamas, niyamas. Yamas and niyamas are the basic things which you should. Don't tell lies. Okay? Don't hurt anybody. Do studies. Keep yourself clean. All these things are there. Do's and don'ts. No greediness. No clutching at things eagerly. All these things are not to be done. Worship of the divine, okay? Reading of the Shastras, whatever is available to you. The reading of the scriptures. These are all the yamas and the niyamas. Then, in fact, the Sanskrit word yama means to control. And niyama means rules that you should do. Then you come to asanas. You start preparing the body. The body is often restless and engaged in useless actions and waste of energy. So you must learn how to preserve your energy, and asanas are a big help in that. The asanas help in maintaining your body and not scattering the energy that is pouring into it. Okay. Then the next is pranayama. You start breathing, because life in the body is represented by breath, mostly. In some, there is no breathing, but still, the breathing is life at the mental level, at the human level, breathing is representative of life. So, make the breathing regular and rhythmic. This is pranayama. And there are many, many types of pranayamas. So, it purifies the, I was seeing one video in which the man is saying that if you purify make your breathing deep and very, very regular, it clears because oxygen is going into the lungs. So it clears all the dirt in the blood, the lymph, that gets cleared up. So, and, he says that many people recommend you to drink water. Water is okay, but that will purify your digestive system. That has nothing to do with the circulation. And this is an interesting fact. You must realize that the two things are quite different. Because when a snake bites you, it is going into the bloodstream. You can even take a snake poison and eat, nothing will happen to you because it's in the digestive tract. So that's the reason why people, when there's a snake bite, they make a quick cut and suck out the blood. No danger to you. So, breathing purifies the blood because of the oxygen going in steadily and deep breathing. So, pranayama is also a recommended way for controlling the vital. Then you come to pratyahara. Pratyahara is pulling the senses in. Normally our senses go wild, they go outside. Anything you see beautiful, it goes out to possess and conquer. So that you should not do. Rein them in like you would wild horses. Pratyahara. This is also an interesting, even the word pratyahara is very interesting because just as your body needs food, your senses also need food. And what is that food? Sense perceptions. It's a very interesting thing. If you are put into a dark room, okay, where there is no sound and no light and nothing reaches you and you are alone, you will not be able to be there for more than a few hours. And if you are there for 24 hours, you are likely to flip even. This is a very interesting thing because that is exactly what the astronauts are taught. Because when they go out, 6 months you have to go to Mars or to other planets and all that. So what they do is they train them to not to feel lonely. So this is how they do it. But you need companionship normally. We don't think of it that way, but if you are alone without companionship, there can be a lot of danger. So just as the food is there for the body, the food, sense perceptions are there for the senses. But you have to teach your senses not to be over excited or over eager for sense perceptions. Pull them in. Control your senses. So that's pratyahara. Then you come to the mind. Once you have made your body steady and you have made your vital fairly steady and pure, then you come to the mind. And the mind also, there are 3 stages. Dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So dharana is the capacity to hold a thought in your mind. Okay, normally we can't even do that. Our mind, we're trying to concentrate here, it runs there, it runs here. So, to hold a thought in your mind. The next is dharana, dhyana, meditation. When we speak of meditation, everybody speaks of meditation, but we are not very clear as to really what it is. It is thinking on one subject, but only on that subject. There is a movement in the mind, there is a thought in the mind, but it's only on one subject. Finally, you come to samadhi, and which is no thought at all. Your mind is completely fixed on something. So these are the 3 stages you have to go through. Okay? So, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Now, samadhi also is of 2-3 types. Okay? They are very interesting. One is no thoughts at all. Samprajnata samadhi, asamprajnata samadhi. And the other one is you are fixed on only one object. There is an object and you are concentrated on that. And you become that. You get identified with that. So, there are different types of samadhi also. Then usually we refer to them as waking samadhi or a samadhi in which you lose consciousness of the physical world. Mother and Sri Aurobindo never lost consciousness of the physical world. For some time, some experiences, Sri Aurobindo said he was in the higher levels of consciousness for several hours. So it's possible at that time that you are there and you are not conscious of the physical world. Also, Mother, when she had the experience of the supramental boat, very clearly she was not conscious of the physical world. She is there, right up there. Okay? And then her experience of the supramental boat is very interesting. All of you should read that. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the clock struck. And that sound pulled her back into her body. So, and she didn't want to come back because the experience she was having was so fantastic. She was in charge of the supramental boat, and she was seeing who is to be allowed and who is not to be allowed. So, we went from Raja Yoga, so I'm telling you about the Samadhi of the different types. Okay, so, otherwise, when Sri Aurobindo and Mother are in a higher consciousness, yet they are interacting with you. That's a waking Samadhi. You're not identified with your thoughts. So, Sri Aurobindo is saying, the integral yoga, there are no fixed paths and you do this, very, very fixed. It is not like that. Why? Because you are not following anything that you have been told to do. You are surrendering to the Divine, and the Divine is doing everything for you. He is doing everything for you. So, He will see what is the best way for you, depending on your nature, and He will do what has to be done. That's what Sri Aurobindo is saying. See?
One question.
Yeah.
When Sri Aurobindo speaks about allowing the thoughts to come through you, but you're still concentrated on the one thing.
Yeah.
That is another aspect.
Allowing that is, just now what we spoke of pratyahara, that means don't let the senses affect you. Similarly, when you try to control the vital with your mind and your will, two things can happen. So, the way to escape this problem is said, but first I'll state the problem. Two things can happen if you try to coerce your vital and try to control it with your mind. Okay. One is suppression. The desire is there in your mind, but you're not giving expression to it. I want to eat sweets, but I will resist. But the thing goes on in your mind. That is suppression. But if you try to throw it out of your mind, that also the vital feels that you may find it funny, but that's how it works, because there is a vital Purusha also, remember. There is a vital being in you. And he will revolt. The vital will revolt if you are strong. So, if you don't feed the vital what it wants, okay, there are two things. One is, if it is strong, it will revolt. And if it is weak, it will go into a depression. It won't cooperate with you. So depending on your nature, that will happen. So to avoid this problem, and silencing the mind also is very difficult. So the method usually adopted is, separate yourself from your feelings, your desires, and also your thoughts. Watch them. That's what you are referring to. Watch your thoughts. Don't try to control them. Just watch your thoughts. Then what happens? Slowly, you keep watching your thoughts. Normally, if you look carefully, you will see that you are not watching your thoughts. You are identified with your thoughts. And you think, I am thinking. But that's not it. The thought is occurring you slowly. There is a thinker and there is a thought. The separation comes. And when that separation comes, you realize that the thoughts are going on their own. And you become only the watcher. That's a much safer method than to try to control. Because the moment you try to control, it doesn't really work always.
Thank you.
Watching the thoughts is one of the ways of doing it. Watch without interfering too much, without being judgmental about yourself. Oh, there is anger in me, there is jealousy in me, that's bad. And then you feel depressed. So instead of that, look at it like a machine. Something has gone wrong in the machine, it has to be set right. So what is the way to set it right? It's only a problem in the machine. I'm watching. Just watch yourself.
Is it the witness consciousness?
Yeah, that's it. The witness consciousness. It finally leads to the witness consciousness. Okay? So, three outstanding features of the action of the higher when it works integrally on the lower nature. In the first place, it does not act according to a fixed system. We looked at the fixed system and succession as in the specialized methods of yoga, but with a sort of free, scattered, and yet gradually intensive and purposeful working determined by the temperament of the individual in whom it operates, the helpful materials which his nature offers, and the obstacles which it presents to purification and perfection. That's the reason why Mother and Sri Aurobindo were not always consistent in their advice to yogi, the sadhaks. One sadhak comes and says, Mother, I feel like not coming out and I feel like remaining in my room and closeting myself and remain aloof. So sometimes they said, yes, you can do that. And sometimes you say, no, don't do that. Because there's too much of an ascetic tendency in you. You come out and mix with people. So depending on the individual, the divine decides what to do and what not to do. So there's no fixed method in the integral yoga. That's what they're saying. And the obstacle which presents to the purification and perfection. Note what a big sentence it is. Huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. No, 6 lines. Okay, I read the next one. In a sense, therefore, each man in his path has his own method of yoga. Yet, there are certain broad lines of working common to all, which enable us to construct not indeed a routine system, but yet some kind of shastra or scientific method of the synthetic yoga. Of the synthetic yoga, he's talking about synthetic yoga, his own yoga, integral yoga. So, first is, the characteristic is, no fixed method. Second, now we read the next para. Secondly, the process being integral accepts our nature such as it stands, organized by our past evolution, and without rejecting anything essential, compels all to undergo a divine change. I am reading the whole para first. Okay. Everything in us is seized by the hands of a mighty artificer and transformed into a clear image of that which it now seeks confusedly to present. In that ever-progressive experience, we begin to perceive how this lower manifestation is constituted, and that everything in it, however seemingly deformed or petty or vile, is the more or less distorted or imperfect figure of some element of or action in the harmony of the divine nature. We begin to understand what the Vedic rishis meant when they spoke of the human forefathers fashioning the gods as a smith forges the crude material in his smithy. So, the integral yoga, you are surrendering to the divine, and the divine looks at you, sees what has to be done, encourages that which has to be encouraged, and discourages that which has to be discouraged, and not only discourages, but sometimes destroys what has to be destroyed. So, he's using like a blacksmith, beating the iron and giving it the shape he wants it to be. Mm-hmm. This is the rebuilding process, and this is very common. All yogis report a time when they feel the reorganization of their being, physically even. Okay? I'm going a little out because some of those words you have to, if you give examples, then you immediately know what he's talking about. This word, for instance, as a smith forges his crude material in his smithy. Jittu Krishnamurti was very conscious there is a process going on in his body. Okay? He is still living, Sadguru. He almost died after his first experience of the cosmic consciousness. He became so weak, his whole body was being rearranged and transformed. And he had to pass through a very difficult period. But after that, he is okay now. So there is a rebuilding of the whole system. That which is like renovating a house. You have to break down a wall and build another one. And the whole thing is like that. So there is a whole rebuilding, not only of the mind and the vital, but even the body.
So the strong man may become weak.
Temporarily.
Temporarily.
Yes. In fact, Sri Aurobindo, if you read his record of yoga, he speaks of very interesting changes in himself. Okay. In fact, it's open to everybody. Look at him in jail, in Alipur jail. Look at his face and look at 1950. You see a tremendous change. What you can't see is the change of the colors, the color of the skin. He was dark to begin with, as the average Bengali, but when he in 1920 onwards, his body became golden color. Absolutely golden color. Not like the Caucasian race white. No, not that. It was absolutely a different color. Absolutely, as I said, almost gold color. So, then he even says that now even the teeth are becoming whiter, the toenails, the shape of the toes are changing. Okay? So this is the refashioning. So now you can understand, when I am giving these examples, you can understand what he means by Smith forges his crude material in his smithy. It is as concrete as that. And sometimes temporarily an illness also can come because of that. When Sri Aurobindo was doing regularly pranayama in Baroda, and when he came to Calcutta for the freedom movement, he could not do his pranayama regularly. He felt seriously ill. He said it almost carried me off. So there again you have to be very, very careful. Mother also had to pass through a period of great, you can say illness from our point of view, but it's actually a process of change.
But he explains it very clearly in Savitri also, what they both had to go through.
Yeah. So that's the second. So the first characteristic of the integral yoga, no fixed method, depending on each individual and his advantages and disadvantages, the divine works on him. You are not making any effort. The only effort you are making is to surrender yourself to the divine. That itself is not an easy thing. Whenever you have a small wish or a small desire or even a will, you are not surrendering. It's not a surrender. Okay, so and the second process is that there is no fixed method. The first process was the divine will take different paths for different individuals. And the second method is
mighty artificer.
There's no fixed system. Okay. So then we come to the third, what he is going to say. So I am reading the next para. Thirdly, the divine power in us. Oh no, sorry, I made a mistake. The second method is the divine accepts what you are, doesn't reject anything. Okay? Now that's a very interesting thing, because suppose you have a lot of hate against somebody. I am taking an extreme case. You hate somebody, you don't like him at all. It's not rejected. It is taken up and transformed. Because basically the opposite dualities are the same. So nothing is rejected. Suppose you are full of desires and full of action. Okay? That is not to be discouraged. But the action, the energy in you is something positive. So get rid of the wrong application of the energy and get to the right application of the energy. So everything is remolded, but there is no rejection. That's what he's saying. Okay? Inside that sentence is very clear, na? However seemingly deformed or petty or vile, note the word vile, dirty, horrible, is more or less the distorted or imperfect figure of some element or action in the harmony of the divine nature. Love can become hate. Okay? It's basically the same vibration. It sounds very funny, but that's how it is. In human nature, we can see that. If your love is not responded, you start hating the person. So it's something very, very natural. This is what happens. Okay, so the dualities, nothing, they are not rejected, they are only transformed.
Now, there's a sentence in the Light Divine to this effect where he says, The form and manner and result of the force of action vary infinitely, but the eternal, primal, infinite energy is the same in all. So, like love and hate, all of this are dualities, right? Like, then he later on says, like, the force that goes in making a man strong and the force that goes in making the man weak, it's the same force.
Essentially is the same. Essentially is the same. So, now we come to the third. Okay? Thirdly, the divine power in us uses all life as the means of the integral yoga. Every experience or outer contact with our world environment, however trifling or however disastrous, is used for the work. And every inner experience, even to the most repellent suffering or the most humiliating fall, becomes a step on the path to perfection. And we recognize in ourselves with opened eyes the method of God in the world. His purpose of light in the obscure, of might in the weak and fallen, of delight in what is grievous and miserable. We see the divine method to be the same in the lower and in the higher working. Only in the one it is pursued stardily and obscurely and through the subconscious in nature. In the other, it becomes swift and self-conscious, and the instrument confesses the hand of the master. All life is a yoga of nature, seeking to manifest God within itself. Yoga marks the stage at which this effort becomes capable of self-awareness and therefore of right completion in the individual. It's a gathering up and concentration of the movements dispersed and loosely combined in the lower evolution. So, what he's saying now is, nothing is to be avoided. Every experience that comes is taken as raw material for your growth. That's what he's saying. However disastrous. So, everything can be, in fact, disasters in one's life can make you progress much faster than pleasant experiences. So, that's what he's saying. We read each sentence, tell me whether we'll see whether it's clear. Thirdly, the divine power in us uses all life as the means of the integral yoga. Okay, so now this is interesting, and it can be a little controversial, and there can be a little bit of misunderstanding also. But it's very interesting to give these examples. Okay, so all life as a means of this integral yoga. Okay, so in other words, there are certain rules, general rules which are laid down. Okay, so you should, in the ashram, these are recommended. They were not absolutely stuck to unless there were individual cases which are difficult, but otherwise, no smoking, no drinking, no sex, no politics. Because if you do that, you are harming yourself. So, these are the 4 rules that were there, mostly. Okay, no smoking, no drinking, no sex, and no politics. Because politics was a question of, because politics by itself is the dirtiest field. Telling the lies in politics is absolutely essential. You have to promise things which you never perform. So that field is something that you should not do. Okay, so but there were cases where people were smoking in the ashram. Okay, in some cases, mother didn't interfere. Even Satprem was smoking.
Mm-hmm.
She mother mentions also to him in one place. Okay, so nothing is to be. Depends on the circumstance and depends on no absolute rules. That's what I'm saying. Everything is to be used for yoga. I'll tell you an interesting story which is there. Okay, and in different cases it will be different things. One person is writing to Swamdev saying, I have understood now what yoga is. We have to accept happily everything that comes to us. We should not reject anything. So Swamdev says, certainly not. Suppose someone comes and gives you a bottle of whiskey, will you accept happily? So, this is one thing. Now, I'll tell you the opposite story. Okay, there used to be a gentleman called Kameshwar in our in the ashram, and he was invited one day by a Frenchman for dinner. So he went, and he was offered liquor, wine. But Kameshwar, very, very correctly, he thought, he said, no, I don't drink, I won't touch, I won't do this. So he came and told mother very proudly that I was offered liquor, and mother, I refused. Mother said, what? You refuse a Frenchman when he's offering you something? So, no fixed rules of any sort, depending on the circumstance, the individual, and the time and space and everything. So, this is you have to understand. So, but what I am saying now can be very controversial. You must not apply it indiscriminately. So, my point is that everything has got a purpose in life. So, to some people it can be harmful, to some people it may not be harmful. Even that which seems the most disastrous, I'm saying, it can be used for progress. Okay? Many people say, for instance, a tsunami comes and killed, even in India, it killed 10,000 people. Okay? In Pondicherry also 100 people died in the tsunami. So, what sort of event is this? Is this not horrible? But someone who is experiencing that, okay, who is living after that, if he is taking it in the right spirit, he will benefit. He can benefit. You may not, but if you take it in the right spirit, it can be. Everything can be used for progress. I know of one particular person, she told me the story herself, but she didn't realize what she was saying because she went through an experience which is very interesting. She says that she used to live on the beach side, and when the tsunami came, the water started coming and rising. It was rising, and she knew that now she is going to drown. And she had a very interesting. Suddenly she found that she is asking herself, is there anything in your life which you would have wanted to change? This review of one's life, it came into her. Okay? And then suddenly she found that the water is receding, but it was such a interesting experience, a review of your life. Okay? This is one of those things which happens in NDE, near-death experience. There is always a review of one's life before death. Okay? It's a very interesting, so she had that experience, but she didn't know what she's saying because she didn't know that it's a very common element in all near-death experiences. So you review quickly your life and see what mistakes you made and what you would like to avoid. So everything can be taken advantage of. Okay, so that completes the third thing. So what are the three things, characteristics of the integral yoga? Number one, the divine does everything for you and there is no fixed way, there is no fixed method. The divine does everything. Individually, he will do what the individual needs. Secondly, what is the second one? Remember? Yeah. So secondly, integral stands organized under a divine change. The divine does everything for you and he uses everything. He uses everything and all the circumstances of life also are used for your progress. So these are the three characteristics of the integral yoga. Mainly because you are surrendering to the divine and asking him to do everything for you. No fixed method. Okay? So, now he says, an integral method and an integral result. Here is a non-sentence. No verb.
Yeah,
okay?
No verb.
But the meaning is very clear. Okay? So, what it means is, if you follow an integral method, the result will be also integral. That's what it's meaning very clearly. In fact, every para now after that is a non-sentence. But An English teacher will tell a student, never do that. Always put a verb. But Srimdu is taking liberties with the English language because he loves it. You can take liberties when love is present.
Beautiful.
Okay, so an integral method and an integral result. First, an integral realization of divine being, not only a realization of the one in its indistinguishable unity, but also in its multitude of aspects, which are also necessary to the complete knowledge of it by the relative consciousness. Not only realization of unity in the self, but of unity in the infinite diversity of activities, worlds and creatures. Very small para, and let's see what he's saying. So, the ascetic is rising to the self and rejecting the world. So, he is going to the one and rejecting the many. Here there is multiplicity, here there is constant action. When you go to the self, there is no action, there is immutability, and there is oneness. So, he opts for oneness and immutability. So, they is saying, why? Why are you avoiding the lower? Come down into the multiplicity, see the oneness in the multiplicity, and also enjoy the action in the physical world by keeping your consciousness immutable. It can be done. He's saying, combine the two. That's what he's saying. We read.
But I feel this very important statement. Infinite diversity of activities, worlds, plural,
Yes.
and creatures,
Yes.
plural.
That's right. Okay. So, an integral method and integral result. First, an integral realization of divine being. Okay. That's the self. Not only a realization of the one in its indistinguishable unity. Indistinguishable unity, very clear. No, like a sea which is absolutely one everywhere. Indistinguishable, no waves anywhere. So when you are seeing, you see only oneness everywhere. That is, you get that experience in the self. So that's what you have to do. Nirvana. Okay. So that's the first experience. Indistinguishable unity. But also in its multitude of aspects, which are also necessary to the complete knowledge of it by the relative consciousness. So what is the relative consciousness? The relative consciousness is our consciousness where we are seeing relativities. We are seeing the many. And opposite to that, when you go to the self, it's the absolute. Absolute and relative are opposites. Relative means necessarily you must have, if I have a relation, there has to be necessarily two. There can be more, but there is minimum two. So relative consciousness means the field of multiplicity. You are seeing the many and thinking they are real. The absolute is the oneness. There, and similarly it can also be indistinguishable oneness. You see only oneness, nothing else. You are seeing only the sea and not the waves. Okay, that's the nirvana experience in the self. When you go to the self. So, relative consciousness, not only realization of unity in the self, but of unity in the infinite diversity of activities, worlds and creatures. So, what is meant by that? You remain in the physical body, don't reject it, and yet you are in the your consciousness is there, and you are watching the divine presence in everything. So, everything that you are seeing in the physical world has got meaning and purpose. It doesn't become like the ascetic experience of the self, nirvana. It doesn't become meaningless, only forms without substance. It doesn't. You have to go up and come down and see the divine presence everywhere.
But you said in this physical world. He says worlds, plural.
Yes.
And activity and
Yes.
creatures, plural.
Yes. Because words means physical world, vital world, mental world. All are words.
Okay. Not worlds outside of the planet Earth?
Also. Oh, you mean physically?
Yes.
Not necessarily.
Not necessary.
Not
Okay.
necessarily.
Okay.
A yogi doesn't know what's going on in the unless he wants to know. That's why Mother and Srimad have never spoken of civilizations out in space. We have not spoken much about it. They are likely to be some developed states of species right outside in the cosmos somewhere. But they haven't spoken much about it. Because he says in the Mother, he says, the earth is a significant center. So what is happening on earth is very, very crucial for the universe. Okay? So in other words, you must not go away from the physical world, but don't be subject to your ignorance and your darkness. Remain in the physical world, but your consciousness should be in light, not in ignorance. So that's what he's saying. Then
one more para.
Yeah, we'll read that. Therefore, also an integral liberation. Again a non-sentence. So, if you are following a integral result, you get an integral liberation. What is meant by integral liberation? We will see. There is different types of liberations. Sayujya mukti, salokya mukti, sadharma mukti. He is going to speak about them. So, we will read that. Therefore, also an integral liberation. Not only the freedom born of unbroken contact and identification of the individual being in all its parts with the divine, Sayujya Mukti, by which it can become free even in its separation, even in the duality. Not only the Salokya Mukti, by which the whole conscious existence dwells in the same status of being as the divine, in the state of Satchidananda, but also the acquisition of the divine nature by the transformation of this lower being into the human image of the divine, Sadharma Mukti, and the complete and final release of all, the liberation of the consciousness from the transitory mold of the ego and its unification with the one being, universal, both in the world and the individual, and transcendentally, one both in the world and beyond all universe. So, we'll just look at these three words that he's using. Sayujya Mukti is the path normally of Jnana Yoga, the way of knowledge, where you become one with the divine in essence. That is Sayujya. The root is yuj, to join in Sanskrit. So, Sayujya Mukti, becoming one with the divine. You go and become one with the divine. Then there is Salokya Mukti, which is the path of the Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. You live in the same world as the divine. Or there is another word also which is used here, not used here, Samipya Mukti, nearness, intimacy with the divine. That also is a Mukti. You get liberation. So different types of liberations. Liberation in knowledge and oneness, liberation in relation with the divine in love and devotion. And finally there is the Sadharma Mukti. You put on the nature of the divine. That comes from Karma Yoga. So Jnana Yoga gives you Sayujya Mukti. Bhakti Yoga gives you Samipya Mukti and Salokya Mukti. And Karma Yoga. In Karma Yoga you are doing everything for the divine and not for yourself. When you are, every action, every emotion, every thought is offered to the divine. So, you slowly put on the nature of the divine. Your nature becomes like that of the divine. So, Sadharma Mukti. So, these three types of mukti, and you will get them all if you are doing the integral yoga. That's what he's saying.
Namaste all. And please attend next week. We begin with the Life Divine on Wednesday. Essays on the Gita, Friday morning, 10 to 11. Life Divine, of course, is the same as Synthesis of Yoga, 6 to 7. And all are welcome. Namaste.